Welcome back to NYSE TV Live, everyone. I'm Kristen Scholler here in studio. Well, we've all seen that very big, beautiful supermoon of late, even as the temperatures get cooler. And we are lucky enough, in fact, to be joined by ice meteorologist Dave Margolin, who's here to help us get a sense of what might be in store this winter as it approaches, and of course, what it means for our pocketbooks as well. Dave, thank you so much for joining.
Hi, Kristen.
So how is the weather tracking in terms of La Nina and cooler temperatures?
Yeah, sure. So first, what is La Nina, maybe, for our audience? It is a reoccurring climate pattern which occurs over the tropical Central Pacific Oceans, where the oceans oscillate from below normal or colder than normal to warmer than normal. When it's colder than normal, it's a La Nina. And when it's warmer than normal, it's an El Nino.
Mm-hmm.
So currently, we are in sort of a neutral. We've been transitioning from El Nino last winter. We're neutral, and the majority of the forecast guidance suggests we are going to move into a La Nina this winter.
Okay, so colder than expected, is that what we should expect?
It depends. It depends. So across the southern and eastern areas of the country, La Ninas tend to skew the temperatures warmer than normal. Across, as the map shows here, and across the northern and northwestern areas of the country, you tend to see a cool skew to the forecast.
Interesting. What are the chances that La Nina could produce extreme weather this autumn and into the winter?
Well, I think the areas to watch are probably from, say, northern or the southern plains up through the Midwest and into the Northeast. Why? Because with La Nina patterns, you tend to get these big blocks that form over the eastern Pacific Ocean, and they produce a lot of cold across Canada and the northern plains. And even in those warmer areas, or the areas that are expected to be warmer than normal for the bulk of the winter, sometimes that cold comes down, like again across the Midwest and Northeast, and it creates a lot of volatility in the weather patterns.
Mm-hmm. So what is an example of extreme weather that could result from some of this volatility as you described?
I think, you're probably going to be looking at significant snow and ice storms, or at least the potential of those, again, across that key corridor where you see the delineation between those warmer areas to the south and east and the colder areas. So Amarillo, northern Texas, all the way up through the Midwest, thinking St. Louis, Chicago, into the Northeast.
Mm-hmm. I know many Americans, including myself, have been tuned into the supermoon this week, the largest of the year, in fact. What is the science behind the shape and size of this supermoon?
Right, so if it looks a little bit bigger in the sky, there's a reason for that. It's when the moon's orbit is at the closest to Earth, so us. And so it definitely does look a little bit bigger, and it looks a little bit brighter in the sky. And in terms of effects for humans, probably the main things are, well, in terms of weather, there really isn't any. In terms of the tides, the scientists say you can see tides maybe a couple inches above normal, and probably the main impact is a lot more sightings of werewolves.
Werewolves? You're being serious?
No.
Okay, that was a joke from the meteorologist. I appreciate that as well. Dave, so I'm just curious here. Fortunately, it's not too chilly yet, at least in the Northeast. I know you mentioned there were some signs possibly of snow in Vermont. What else are you monitoring right now in terms of potential weather disruptions?
Well, let's start with tropics, right? Because, Milton is still fresh in our memory. It seems like people in Tampa and that area are just getting back to some normalcy, with electricity now on for the majority of people, schools finally back, and operations basically coming back to normal. So thankfully, when we're in terms of tropics right now, there are two systems we're watching, or disturbances, I should say, in the Atlantic, but fortunately very low risk that they'll impact the United States. Mm-hmm. And second, when we think more broadly in terms of what might happen for the rest of the year, well, when we look at the frequency of hurricanes in November and December, two takeaways to talk about. One is that we're basically already about 95% through the season. Mm-hmm. So whatever we see for the next couple months, it should be relatively limited. But in terms of where it goes or where they might track, the main area to watch would be across the eastern Gulf of Mexico and unfortunately across Florida.
Dave Margolin, our in-house meteorologist. Dave, thank you.
Thank you, Krista.